Going to Disneyland has become an increasingly complex activity. For the most part, we've come to accept the crowds and the waits and the prices. But Fresh Baked has some tips, hacks if you will, that might just improve your Disneyland experience and maybe make you the hero of your family or group at the park. We present to you our top 10 Disneyland hacks. Let's start at the beginning, where to park. If you don't mind missing out on a little Disney magic, because obviously the Mickey and Friends tram is kind of magical, but if you're okay with missing this, then you should definitely park at the Toy Story parking lot on Harbor Boulevard. Parking at Toy Story is an incredible time saver. Access to the lot is immediately off of Harbor and virtually hassle-free. There's pretty much never more than 5 or 10 cars in the line to pay, and it's not a cavernous lot where you have to go up and around and back and forth and drive for a mile and a half before you eventually just get to your parking space. Meanwhile, the buses are very close to where you park, in some cases literally right next to where your car is, depending on luck, and they come one right after the other. That means no long walk from your spot down the escalator into the tram where you have to wait 10 minutes if you don't get one on the first cycle, which you pretty much never do, before taking another 10-minute ride to downtown Disney and another walk to bag check. If you're coming from the south, the whole process takes about 30 minutes tops, and that includes the drive into the parking lot. It's a little longer from the north, but still worth it. But no matter which direction you arrive from at the Mickey and Friends structure, it's at least 45 minutes to an hour, and close to that hour if you're coming from the south. Total bus ride time, usually not more than 10 minutes, about the same as a tram ride. So take my advice, Fresh Baked. If time is important to you, take it from me, a guy who knows a thing or two about being efficient. Park at the Toy Story parking lot. Okay, so you parked at Mickey and Friends anyway. Can't blame you, the tram is pretty great. But here's a pro tip that you can take advantage of that will definitely give you that expert appeal to your friends and family. Always go to the very end of the available lines, that last stall on the left. Most guests will jump in the first reasonably sized queue and just wait. As a result, the very last car is almost always near empty, even on busy days. Further, take the line to the right of the chain link. This queue is separated left side for strollers, right side for regular guests, but many think there's only the one side on the left. So go far right and you're in like Flynn. By the way, this does work, but not quite as well if there's a tram boarding on the right. But rather than getting in the last car, you're getting actually in the first car. It also works when you leave. In fact, sometimes they're boarding 2 trams at a time, and when this happens, practically nobody hits that second tram, so be on the lookout for that. Alright, so we've parked, we've taken a tram ride in or a bus ride in. Let's go to the park. Now, our recommendation always is to go to the park at rope drop. First thing in the morning. It's a pro move. It's the reason we do our show almost exclusively from 8 a.m. to 3 or 4 p.m. You just get more accomplished this way. But it's not enough to just go early. You go early so that you can hit those attractions that will have simply unbearable wait times in just a few hours. We're talking Space Mountain, Star Tours, Indiana Jones, and Peter Pan, Finding Nemo, especially Finding Nemo. That's going to be an hour fast, and it's not a quick mover. That's a ride you want to get done early if you're going to do it. So if any of those rides are on your must-do list, do those first thing in the morning. Which takes us to our next tip regarding what to ride and when. If you do go early, do not waste that opportunity by doing dark rides, with the exception of maybe Peter Pan, of course. If you love Pirates or Haunted Mansion, don't worry, pass it. It'll still be there later in the day, but the lines hardly ever take more than 30 minutes, which is easy to do for just about everyone, right? Same goes for any attraction that goes quick though. That's a phrase we use for any attraction whose queue may look long, but is at least constantly moving. This is the kind of queue that keeps the momentum of your day going. These include Matterhorn, Small World, and Pirates of the Caribbean. Save those for the late afternoons and evenings when everybody's trying to cram on a Space Mountain. That's when you ride those dark rides. So let's get into some queues. The Autopia Cue can sometimes be intimidating, but there is a bit of a shortcut you can take advantage of, but only if you're paying attention to which lanes are open. The Autopia Cue splits as you approach the bridge, and a CM will direct you to a particular side, but you can just ask for either the left or the right. Which way depends on traffic. The right side is quicker to board as the left, because the left side has to cross the length of the bridge before heading downstairs. But don't go right automatically. Sometimes there are only 3 lanes of traffic operating, and if it's 2 on the right and 1 on the left, then you should go on the left side, as they will board twice as many guests that way. But if all 4 lanes are open, or if both lanes on the left side are open, then definitely go right at the split. Let's go to Pirates. This is again one that splits, and it's kind of one of the oldest questions. That people who go to the park a lot always ask: do I go left or right at Pirates? There is a definite advantage to going one way or the other, and we suggest going right. This is especially true when it's busier. When it's busy, the left queue will take you down a deepish path down the side of the building, whereas the right side does only a shortish kind of switchback before entering the building straight in. The downside, though, is that you don't get to play that fun knocking on the window game with guests that are inside the building. Now, while we're on the topic of rides and queues, here's a couple other quick tips. Definitely get a fast pass for Haunted Mansion, as it often drops you right at the front door, bypassing the entire queue. Board the Disneyland Railroad at New Orleans Square. Though it's often less crowded at Tomorrowland, pretty much nobody gets off there, which means fewer people board. And that's what you're looking for, is guests getting off the train. The most common deboarding location is New Orleans Square. Maybe Toontown is a close second. And then finally, if you want to ride Casey Jr., watch to see if it's running 2 trains. There's usually only one, but if there are 2, then that impossibly long-looking queue just got cut in half. Let's take a break to debunk some commonly held hacks that we believe are not to your benefit. During parades, it's often suggested that you should snake through the gift shops on Main Street, but this does not work. A, it's very crowded in the shops also. And 2, you can only get about halfway before you have to get back out on Main Street at the Carnation Cafe. Further, I also feel like this is kind of intrusive and rude to the guests who are actually trying to dine and shop at that time, so I like to stay on the street. There are no death certificates at the Haunted Mansion, not even secret ones. The only time this ever happened was for a special event where guests were given tours of the scary or haunted attractions at Disneyland, and those guests were given death certificates. Otherwise, it's just a myth. Please do not yell, "Andy's coming," when you see Woody or Buzz. They absolutely will not fall down and pretend to be inanimate toys. It is not less crowded on the day of Thanksgiving or Easter or the Super Bowl, Black Friday or Christmas, or any other day you think people probably wouldn't want to go to Disneyland. In fact, just go ahead and assume they probably do want to go to Disneyland on any day you're thinking of. Single rider is a great way to shorten your wait, even when you're with a group. But as is the case for most hacks, be mindful of which attractions have them and when it's ideal to use them. At Disneyland, these include Indiana Jones, Splash Mountain, and the Matterhorn. At DCA, they include California Screamin', Goofy Sky School, Grizzly River Run, and Soarin' Around the World. Now, when to use them depends on what kind of attraction you're getting into and how guests are loaded into the attraction. Soarin' Around the World, for example, rarely has openings for single riders, so it takes quite a while to get yourself placed. Goofy Sky School has only 4 seats, which is often not an ideal number for single rider opportunities. The line itself is usually pretty short, so if you're in a group, don't bother. Meanwhile, Raider Springs Racers has the most popular single rider queue, and thus one of the longer waits. Our rule of thumb is that if you can see the end of the single rider queue from the main entrance to the attraction, don't bother. That's at least a 45-minute wait. As a general rule, Disneyland does not offer refills, not even the kind that you can purchase with, say, one of those big mugs. But if you go to a restaurant that has fountains available to the public, like cafeteria style, then you can in fact get a free refill. They'll say to keep your receipt, but I've never even been asked for that. You can just go in and get your refill. These restaurants include Rancho del Zocalo and Pizza Port at Disneyland and Boardwalk Pizza and Pasta in DCA. And like most restaurants, water is free no matter where you go, but many don't know is that there are also free filtered water stations around the park. I often see people refilling their personal bottles at drinking fountains, then gasping when they get a look at how clean the water is. But there are in fact filtered water stations in a few places around the park. So you can fill up at Tomorrowland, at Tomorrowland Terrace, or the French Market in New Orleans Square. And this last tip is probably one of my favorite pro tips, and it's one for guests who are truly trying to maximize their day at the park. You want to see a parade, and you don't really care where you sit, but you don't want to camp for 2 hours to do it, which, by the way, is probably the minimum amount of time you need to camp for a reasonably good spot. Our preferred spot when we want to do a parade as last minute as possible is to head to Fantasyland for an area that looks like a walkway, but is actually going to be a viewing area when it's parade time. Most bypass it as they think it's always going to be a walkway, so they look for one of the usual spots. But look for this pole right here. Everything between this pole and the Matterhorn will be viewing area. And then going backwards too, so it's a pretty deep seating area. Just be sure to be behind the line created by these bricks. This area won't start filling up until about 30-45 minutes before the parade, which gives you like an hour or so to spend doing other things at the park when you would have been waiting for that spot on Main Street. And that's a wrap on our top 10 hacks that will definitely make you the hero of your group or family when you guys go to Disneyland next. Let us know in the comments below what your favorite hacks are, and maybe we'll include them in the next installment. Until next time, guys, fresh bake! We've got lots more videos for you to see, so grab a churro and check out our Star Wars Land updates from the Knothole Gang, or maybe our Secrets in History videos. Or you can just watch all of our weekly trip reports and have your mind blown by how much fun we're having. We truly are the best of Disney Bake Fresh Daily. And don't forget, you can support Fresh Baked by joining our Patreon campaign or by buying a Fresh Baked t-shirt. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Fresh Baked!